Good afternoon, guys and dolls. Welcome to another exciting episode of Spotlight. I'm Nicholas Price, filling in for Chinky, and we are now streaming live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page, TribuneNow on YouTube, and Daily Tribune Official on TikTok. Today's guest is a visionary behind the camera and a storyteller at heart, bringing to life the unseen, the unheard, and the deeply human stories of the Filipino spirit. From remote islands to conflict zones, he has dedicated his life to documenting the culture, struggles, and triumphs of our people through film, photography, and fearless journalism. Let's shine the spotlight on documentary filmmaker, photographer, and founder of Project Larawan, Gab Malvar.
Hi,
Hey,
good
welcome,
afternoon.
welcome. I
Yes.
mean, I've seen like so much of your work, Din, especially on Daily Tribune's platforms, and I would very excited to like learn more about it and what goes on behind that. And so your documentary On the Brink received international recognition for its take on whale shark tourism. What was the biggest challenge in telling that story truthfully without losing the audience's empathy? Because I mean, it's people talaga talk about they're gonna go to Osloba and there's also another location and they're so excited to like swim with the whale sharks, but then is that sustainable? What does that do for the sharks? No.
Okay. On the brink was actually a when we did On the Brink with Nila Ayuni. Uh, she used to be an anchor for China television. She's now back in the U.S. So we wanted to do a documentary comparing two versions of whale shark tourism. Okay, one was in Donsol, which was where it was originally. Yung unang na discover yan, Donsol, and then the one was in Oslo. And the difference was that in Donsol, it was more like you were in a safari.
Yes.
You went into a boat, and then may mga spotter, then you look for it, and sometimes when they see it, so you bring the boat to where the trajectory of the whale sharks, and then you jump in the water.
Yeah.
And so you see them approaching, and then they pass by, you try to swim with them, and eventually, iiwan ka, mabilis eh. And so that was it. For a brief moment, it could last 15 seconds
Yes.
to 30 seconds and all that. And then after that, the boat comes back for you. And then you get back in and say, okay, let's look for another one.
Yeah.
So in a period of, let's say, 4 hours maybe, you could have as many as in a day. Well, the most I had was probably 8 encounters, but it could be that you don't see any. Okay, so ano siya, very fleeting and very touch and go, and it could be minsan kung lumabas ka, wala kang nakita. But in Oslo, it's a different thing because of the feeding that goes on. So it's like a assembly line. It's like a process. The whale sharks are there. They get fed. Tourists go into boats and then they go around. Ganyan. And so you have 2 types of whale shark tourism activities. Now the issue there was it was being raised by some environmentalists and natural scientists that feeding is very detrimental. Okay, so what we did was we actually looked at both activities and looked at the pros and cons of both practices.
Yes.
Of course, syempre, from I think an 8th class municipality, Oslo was able to transform itself into something much higher. Nakapagpatayo ng hospital, nakapagpatayo ng eskwelahan. Ang lifestyle ng mga mangingisda nag-iba. May mga ancillary businesses in terms of like vans and tourism accommodations and all that. So nagkaroon ng yaman
Yes.
yung municipality. But may natural environmental, for lack of a better term, effects on, let's say, the migration of the fish, the whale sharks, in terms of safety of the whale sharks and all that. So yun nga. So is it like commercialism, or is it how do you marry,
Yes.
diba? Tourism benefits, eco-friendly and sustainability with, syempre, you cannot deny that there is revenue for a municipality that doesn't earn anything. Suddenly they can put up schools. So that's that. So we never made a call in terms of what we thought it should be, but it's like these are all the facts. These are the pros and cons. As someone who's viewed it, you make your own decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I find that documentaries tend to kind of get muddled in that where you realize that this filmmaker kind of has an agenda or is taking a side. No, I mean
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
there have been like some very popular documentaries like that, but I do appreciate that approach. Now you're really just showing two sides of a coin, and putting all the facts out there and letting people figure out what is really important. Parang balance, diba?
But you know what? I mean, of course, you will always have a bias as a
Yes.
filmmaker or whatever, as a writer, as a person. You will have a bias, and I think you want to present facts the way they are, but you do have a bias, and I think in a subtle way, it's going to be seen and felt what we were actually going for.
Which is
But
what was that?
it's very obvious. But personally, I would prefer to have a balance.
Yes.
To have it more like it's like having a petting zoo
Yes.
or having a safari.
Mm-hmm.
And so between the two, I think there you can actually reconcile it in the sense that there can be safeguards. Oslo, if remanaged perhaps, or with certain restrictions, for instance, pwede naman
Boundaries.
it can be. I think there's a happy balance somewhere there.
Yes.
But on the extreme side, if you say is Donsol or Oslo, I would be siding more with the Donsol model rather than with the Oslo model.
I mean, that is very interesting that we just have these two polar opposites of how to do it, and I mean that just kind of invites us to find that happy medium talaga. No? So I hope we make progress in that regard, and your documentary will have definitely helped, no? Yun. So you've embedded yourself in some of the most remote and politically sensitive areas in the Philippines. Grabe. How do you gain the trust of your subjects, especially in documentaries like Passages or Know Your North?
Well, Passages was about Sulu and Tawi-Tawi.
Sorry for that.
Sorry.
Slight technical difficulty, but we're continuing.
Okay, so Passages actually, before I really went into, let's say, documenting Sulu or Tawi-Tawi, I had a fascination for that part of the Philippines. See, growing up, our neighbor was the late General Bautista. Okay, who was killed in Sulu way back in the 70s. Okay, and so I found out about Sulu and all that. So you hear about the wars in the South, and for some reason I was fascinated by that, and I wanted to see more of that. And then also, I like to read a lot of. I'm 58 years old, so my childhood, my upbringing, is based on the type of media that was available when you were growing up, and so it was really Nat Geo, Time and Life, that type. Okay, so around early in the 2000s, I was also able to a National Geographic issue. It featured Sebastian Younger, who's like a writer for National Geographic. He went to Afghanistan and looked for this guy named Ahmad Shah Massoud, who's also called the Lion of Panjshir. Okay, he was the one who drove the Soviets out of Afghanistan, and after the Soviets had left, he was the one who led the fight against the Taliban. Okay, he's known as the Lion of Panjshir, and so several days before 9/11, the Taliban assassinated him. Okay, but he was the head of the Northern Alliance against the Taliban. But in that spread that Sebastian Younger wrote of his time visiting that leader, and I was going through it, and the photos were incredible, the storytelling was incredible. I said, "This is fascinating. This is fascinating." And so, when I came back to the Philippines around 2010, I said, I'm going to go to Sulu. I'm going to visit Tawi-Tawi. So what I did was, it was more fascination. I wanted to know more about the places. Because visually, in terms of taking photos, the imagery, culture, the dance, yung kalis, even yung bihes, di ba? Yung pisiyabit, or yung tepo mat weaving, or paggawa ng mga boats and all that. It's really fascinating.
Yes.
Visually, and then the stories behind it. So for instance, these are seafaring people in Tawi-Tawi. Those boats are made in Cebu too, and also in parts of Bonggao. But if you look at the craftsmanship, walang pako, and they're very seaworthy. So things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so it fascinates you. And so these are stories that appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or let's say when you find out about the history of how, a kalis in Greece is made
Yes.
and what goes into that. Or maybe pearl diving. Or maybe what goes behind, let's say, uh, religious rituals, for instance, in terms of what's the equivalent, in baptism sa Catholic or sa Christian, what is the equivalent in terms of how it's done in the Islamic world?
Yes.
They have something called pagunting, yung mga ganun. And so I like that. I like the differences. I'm fascinated with the culture, visually and story wise. So I would go there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go there to visit, to see it for myself. And then I take pictures, I take photos. But it's more like for my own. And then they become the basis of maybe I should write this down.
Yes.
Or maybe I should document it. Because if it fascinates me, I need to share this with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So when they watch it, it's like they're living through you vicariously.
Yes.
So I want to transport stories back to people because I love reading stories and I want to tell those stories. So, and it writes itself eh. Parang,
Mhm.
ang ganda. Actually, pag makita mo, kuha mo, andyan na, ang ganda eh.
Yes.
Isulat mo, andyan na, nandyan. Those stories are there. I'm just lucky that I get to go there and document it. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you said that about it's such a it's a distinct culture. We're exposed to it naman in Metro Manila. You
Yeah.
know, growing up, there's some kind of education and exposure there, but it's still distinct, and it's like part of what the whole Philippines has to offer.
Yeah.
Diba? And I feel like some sort of, as someone who enjoys traveling, I kind of feel like a sort of responsibility to just familiarize myself with everything that the country has to offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially something that parang it feels so distant and kind of other,
Yeah.
like that's still us, that's still Filipino. And for me, I find that the way that I want to parang explore that is food. Like I've been very much into parang Maranao food lately. I like searched for a place where I could find parang authentic Maranao food. I visited Quiapo to like try the parang the Muslim food there, and it's just like it's just a part of experiencing your own culture, din, diba?
See, it's an interesting point because when you say okay, Filipino identity, what is the Filipino identity? So let's say, what is the Filipino language? What's a
Diba, it's
we
not,
say it's
no.
Filipino.
Yeah, but
It doesn't
everything,
mean
yeah.
it's Tagalog.
Yes.
We use Tagalog all the time. But Filipino means Filipino. It recognizes Chabacano, Cebuano. It's all that, di ba? Hiligaynon and all that. Ibig sabihin, the identity is multicultural.
Yes.
And it's a multi-layered fabric. So to be able to say, I am this, you're going to have to understand the different things
Definitely,
that
yeah.
make you Filipino.
Yes.
It's multicultural. It's complex in the sense that it's marami yan eh. But it's not one singular identity. It's a multicultural, complex psyche of all this. But so I cannot say this is my identity. We cannot identify one particular. It has to be the amalgamation of all that. Diba? So
Yeah.
I think what I do is I try to capture snapshots of this and that and this and that, put it out there. So it helps in meron pala tayong ganyan sa North, meron pala tayong ganyan sa South, because that's part of who we are. That's part of our identity.
Yep, that's what it means to be Filipino.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about this for an hour, but we are going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be back with Gab Malvar.
This break is brought to you by Meralco, ang liwanag ng bukas. SM, we've got it all for you. Union Bank, it starts with you.
Usapang OFW is the show that honors the journeys of our modern-day heroes, our OFWs. Join Chingmi Fernandez, John Dodson, and Rafi Ayang every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. to hear the real stories behind the sacrifices. Watch it live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page, Tribune Now on YouTube, and Daily Tribune Official on TikTok.
Want to hear from thought leaders shaping our world? Straight Talk with Chito Lazada and Edmond Libano dives into leadership, politics, and business every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Catch conversation live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page, Tribune Now on YouTube, and Daily Tribune Official on TikTok.
Ready for the hot takes on today's biggest issues? Hot Patatas with Vernon Velasquez and Carl Magadia delivers the news that matters. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Tune in live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page, Tribune Now on YouTube, and Daily Tribune Official on TikTok, where the real talk happens.
And we're back on Spotlight with Gab Malvar. So before the break, we were talking about what it means to be a Filipino, and you know, Gab has also been has explored that, and also conservation, sustainable tourism. How about Typhoon Yolanda? No, I mean, your film Fields of Hope stood out for its emotional depth after that calamity. What drew you to that story, and how did that experience affect you as a storyteller?
Actually, after Typhoon Yolanda, we before we did a documentary on it, we actually we brought football coaches to Tacloban to help the young kids adapt to the trauma, because a lot of them almost passed away. So to adapt to the trauma, we brought football coaches to teach young kids how to play football para matanggal yung isip doon. So they were playing. Eventually, it became so successful. It became naipasok siya. And then there were several teams from different areas. So we did a tournament. Okay. And so they were playing against each other. So nakatulong eh. And at the same time, during that time, Barcelona came to town for their training.
Yes, I see they're offering they offer that every
they were
year.
offering that, and so we were able to get several of our kids to be part of the Barcelona training activities. And so with that, so yun nga, parang ganyan. And then it was really a story about how young kids used football to cope. And at the same time, the Pope, the late Pope came. And so because he's a big fan of in Argentina.
Yes.
I forget the name. And so he was there, so he saw the kids also. Parang that sort of like culminated and put it all together. But it's really a story about football and Yolanda. It wasn't a story about the tragedy per se.
Yeah.
It was a story of hope. It's Fields of Hope.
Yes.
How kids are coping to be able to get out of the trauma of Yolanda.
I mean, we all kind of had to find our own way, diba, to get through that as a nation pa. So yeah, I mean, sports is so effective. And it's just interesting because parang football, as someone who enjoys football, like it's kind of more of a, it seems to be more prevalent and enjoyed in Visayas, diba? So, and also, especially in the aftermath of something like Yolanda, it doesn't need that much infrastructure, diba? Like you're just playing in a field. So parang it just fits together so well.
San Lorenzo is the team of the late father. San Lorenzo in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, and so maybe closer to home within the Daily Tribune family, let's talk about Project Larawan and what inspired you to create this platform focused on photo storytelling, and how does it differ from your filmmaker approach? I mean, I just wanted to say then that like I'm a big believer in making art more accessible, and just the fact that we have these photo essays, just these works on in our broadsheet and online, it really exposes more people to Philippine culture and the things that interest you as a filmmaker, writer.
Project Larawan is actually although I've been doing it for a while, it wasn't really called Project Larawan until maybe the last 6 years or so. See, because I always went out. I like traveling. So I used to be a travel writer also. So when I go to a place, I shoot for it started out really as when I go to a place, I write it for my journal. But I write it like an article. So when I go back and read it, it's like I'm reading something written by a third person. And when I shoot the photos, it's actually to be part of that, but of that spread, which is actually my own personal journal. But eventually, someone saw it and they started printing it and publishing it.
Yeah.
So eventually, then I started doing travel writing. Okay, so I used to go everywhere, although here, there, ganyan. And so in the course of going out, you meet different people. And then some are really fast. Oh, kuya, nag-ano na fishball. Kuha kitang picture. Okay, again. Okay, nagkukwento siya. So sometimes in a bus, naghihintay ka ng bus in Baguio. Kwentuhan kayo. Kuha kitang picture. Yan. But those are just like mementos of people that you meet on the road with fascinating stories.
Yes.
So it started out like that. Okay. So my approach to, let's say, photography, I'm not a social landscape photographer or street photography or what, diba? Kasi iba-iba yan eh. Ako, I like to take portraits. So hindi siya, it's not parang post with a deeper meaning. It's just like, this is that person. Oh, I'll take your, para kang gumagawa ng yearbook.
Yes.
Okay? Oh, sige yan. James Santos, 4C. Parang ganun.
Yeah.
So it's more like documenting people and hearing about their story. And then this is my souvenir of that person. It started out like that. And then that's why my brother told me, anong gagawin mo sa mga retratong ganyan? Why don't you just consolidate it, put it all, kasi nakita niya eh. Oh, then say, I'll call it Project Larawan. So when you look at it, it says Project Larawan. Parang profiles of the Filipino, one portrait at a time. Very straightforward. So the story is, this guy, he's a basi maker in Ilocos. Oh, kuhaan kita manong, may ganun. Ito yung kwento niya. So straightforward. You're documenting iba-ibang tao.
Yeah.
Some could be your man on the street. Some could be a bit more famous. Some could be national living treasures, Gamaba, awardees. Some could be like that. But mostly they're just Filipinos. And then you document it. And hopefully when you compile it, when you look at it, paisa-isa sometimes, yan na yan. But then I think when you look at it collectively, then the personality of the whole, how do you say this, initiative,
Yes.
makikita mo when you look at several. Parang ganun. And then it takes a life of its own and then it becomes what it is.
I would say even as individual photos, they're very relatable to just the average viewer because, a lot of people think that art, is like, even photography is like highbrow, like you need to like be educated in it to understand it. But, a great example is Humans of New York. I mean, that's just man on the street. Like this guy takes photos of just people in New York and they tell a short story about themselves. That's so relatable to anyone, diba? So parang your work, just being able to see people from different backgrounds, different locations, like that's something that really parang makes art more accessible. And yeah.
I mean, I'll put this out there. Madaming magaling gumawa ng retrato. Marami. Lahat ng bata. Whether it's a phone or it's an EOS or what. Maraming magaling kumuha. And so at the end of the day, what's your take on a photo? What's your take on this? What makes that photo uniquely yours? And what's your niche in terms of how you want to take photos? Iba-iba yan eh. Kanya-kanyang style, kanya-kanya. Iba gusto black and white, iba gusto film. Iba gusto kailangan may deeper meaning yung Madaming magagaling. But so, my take is, this is a person I met who resonated with me, and I'll try to capture the essence of that person. Sometimes, nagmamadali, you just have to take it kasi, kailangan ko umalis.
Yeah.
Nagabang ako ng bus. So you can't really set it up. You can't really, teka, isa pa. Hindi na, bye-bye. So you end up with medyo hindi masyado sharp. Diba? It's part of the, so these are not technically,
also, diba?
It's not technically precise photos. So I want to retake them, but hindi na pwede. But at the same time, okay, for instance, I was lucky that I was able to, let's say, make arrangement, let's say, to be able to meet certain people. And so when you meet them, hindi mo naman pwedeng, for instance, let's say, Commander Bravo of the MILF. So I was lucky to have met him. Medyo nakakatakot, siyempre, di ba? So alam mo, sir, tayo ka dito, ganyan. Hindi. Di ba? So medyo kailangan maganda na yung retrato ko pag ganun ko dahil wala na akong chance, di ba? Hindi naman to photoshoot na pictorial eh. Baka, you know what I'm saying? So, chamba-chamba, may kaba, may ganon. So maybe the photos may not be as good or how you want it. Di ba? Kasi you have ideas in your head. Pero wala, ito na yan eh. So, but sometimes being there is enough. Di ba? Being there is enough. Maybe it's not just the photo per se, but what it represents, that's a point in time thing. Hindi na yan mauulit.
Yeah, it's a moment.
It's a moment.
Yeah.
You got it. Maybe not technical. Frank Kappa, for instance. I'm not saying Frank Kappa. Yung binaril na ganyan, it's not sharp, it's blurry and all that. But that's the moment.
Yes.
So you have to live with the certain things. Yeah. But as much as I can, pagka medyo, ate, isa pang retrato, hindi maganda. Isa pa banda rito. You know what I'm saying, right?
If you can do it.
Oh, so, but it's also, hit and miss.
Mhm.
Diba? I think sometimes if you see the final photograph, wait, this looks nice. But what goes behind that, there's also the effort and also the, oh, it's not going too well. Ang medyo hindi maganda yung trabaho mo, di ba?
Mhm.
So, ganun. It's, so sometimes, may malaking bagay yung swerte.
Yes.
Luck.
In life, in
So,
art.
swerte. Ganun. You look at your body of work, medyo marami namang swerte. Dami namang okay.
Yes. And going back to filmmaking, your documentaries often highlight underrepresented communities. You talked about these municipalities, like how Oslo was raised from not doing so great, and in Tawi and Sulu also. So how is it important for you to amplify these voices? Parang what makes you go for these look for stories and journey to these regions to try to tell their stories?
Yung, for instance, like we have an initiative called Know Your North. So I'm lucky because I have a corporate sponsor who believes in the vision of telling stories. So Know Your North is actually produced by Victory Liner. Essentially, these are stories about the northern region of what they cover, but it's also expanded to even places that they don't have a route. You know what I'm saying? And so if you look at our Know Your North documentaries, you watch it. It just says at the end, Know Your North, produced by Victory Liner. And then people get surprised. Huh?
Yung bus company?
Bus company pala gumawa niyan. But you will not find the bus. You will not find the bus station. And the stories are stories. It's just that it's produced by a bus company. And so with that, because their initiative, they wanted to just tell stories about the areas that they cover.
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't about, sumakay kayo ng bus, papunta na. Now, if, that's part of the equity that you may want to take it after the fact, but they don't say, ride this bus to go to Kalinga, that. We tell a story of Kalinga, let's say the last tattooed women of Kalinga. It's fascinating. And so, ang gandang, okay pala to. Produced pala by Victory Liner. But they never sold me a ticket. They never showed me anything about. So anyway, that kind of a corporate sponsor helps me because now I can tell different stories. Hindi ka confined that I'm selling a bus. No,
Yes.
I'm telling a story. They're producing it.
They're enabling you.
They're enabling that story to be told. And because they're enabling that story to be told, they get recognized. In fact, the NCCA awarded the Know Your North initiative by the Victory Liner with the Gawad Gabay Award because of its support to the culture and arts and heritage preservation and all that. So yun yung benefit.
Yes.
Na-recognize yung effort. And that, I would say, that goodwill, di ba? That goodwill is goodwill. And so they get recognized for that. So we tell the stories. That's the equivalence. Diba?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be,
And audiences naman will recognize when a brand would be kind of maybe trying to you know what I mean, get elbow their way in a bit. So the fact that they're just so enabling lang talaga, I mean, that really lets you tell the stories you want, diba? And speaking of those, is there like a particular work that you feel best represents your vision, probably the most well executed, like Gabriel Malvar's vision? Like what work would that be? I know they're your babies. Like how do you choose between them?
There are some stories that actually stand out, but there are certain executions that also stand out. But maybe the story behind it, I don't feel as strongly as some of the stories. Because I mean, may execution part, and then may compelling yung story. May ganun yun.
Yes.
So the happy medium is, you know what? I like the story and I like how we made it. So may mga various levels.
What do those be?
Well, the thing is, yung may mga sinasali kami sa mga festivals abroad.
Yeah, tell us more din about that after, no?
Okay. The one is, it's called the UNESCO Heritage Sites of Ilocos. Okay. So I was fascinated when I read the late Augusto Villalon. Augusto Villalon wrote the proposal to be able to recognize why certain, let's say, like why vegan or why the Baroque churches of the Philippines are UNESCO certified. Okay, Siya yung nagsulat nun. I was able to read some of his work and said, ang ganda ang lalim nito, ang ganda ng kwento. Now, I want to be able to explain this to people. Yun yung In the way he said it, I want to be able to put this on film and explain it the way he wants to explain it. But the challenge was, it's a technical paper. So di ba? Baka maging infomercial.
Yes.
Okay. So how do I now grasp the essence of what he said and translate it into something that's cinematic and it's not boring? And it parang, wow, ganun. So yung ginawa namin doon, essentially, we took the point of view of a Spaniard who created his own, because he missed Spain so much. Kasi yun naman yung essence ng UNESCO, di ba? Why vegan is recognized as such. It's the fusion of Spain and the local culture and how they fuse together to create something beyond what it is. Vegan is a fusion of Spanish ideas and local execution. Poway Church, for instance, they're used to the grand Baroque, the grand churches in Europe, applied here. Pero may earthquake. So you have to define it, you have to execute it particular to the peculiarities of the Philippines. Naka-separate yung bell tower, yung ganon, di ba? So yun yan Yun yung recognize that fusion.
Yes.
So to be able to tell that story, sabi ko, ang ginawa namin, point of view ng Spaniard, namimiss niya yung Spain. Kaya ito yung ginawa nila with the Filipinos to be, parang siya yung nagkukwento. That's why it's written in Spanish. So to tell the essence, that was the point of view that we decided to go with. And so okay naman. I mean, it it won a few awards outside. So
just hearing that description makes me wish I had been to vegan. I'll have to go very soon. Yeah.
So that's one. For instance, the last tattooed women of Tanudan. Okay, so the whole tattooing, the whole tattooing tradition is actually in Kalinga. Is actually Tanudan. Okay, so right now there are about, maybe when we made that, there were about less than 50 full sleeve tattooed people. Siyempre namamatay-matay na .
Yes.
Okay, kasi before, pag may tattoo ka, you're considered beautiful. Okay? But then when the missionaries came, they said, so nawala. So yung generation na yun, that's the last with full sleeves and all that. Yun. So nawala yung tradition yun . So ngayon, ang nangyari, right now there may be 40 na lang yan. And predominantly they're all from Tanudan. Okay? So we wanted to tell that story, but nawala and all that. So the storyteller, Nati Sugiyaw, who used to be the NICP head in Kalinga, was the one telling that story. And she had her full-sleeved Kalinga tattoo when she was in her 50s, precisely to pay tribute dun sa mga kababaihan na yan, who a lot of them are tiya-tiya niya. So that was the story.
What a story.
That was the story. So parang it's a story about women and stigma and now paying tribute. And it was a story of that. Not in ito yung package. No.
Yeah.
It was more of a story about what defines beauty, diba? Or if I had to stop doing this, are we reviving it? It's that . Yun yung gusto kong mga kwento. So yeah, that's one of them. Like a few things.
Yeah, I mean, check out Gab Malvar's work if you want to learn more, not just about Philippine culture, but about beauty and the North, no? I mean, you do a lot of work on the extremes, no? Pang North, vegan, and Sulutawi-tawi, just like the roads less traveled talaga, I would say.
I wouldn't say you go to the roads less traveled. I say I look for ano magandang kwento. The thing is, don't get me wrong, madaming kwento kahit sa Maynila. Maraming kwento. It's just that because of the proximity, marami rin gumagawa ng kwento about it.
Yes.
So to a certain extent, hindi naman, how many more stories of something can we add to the number of stories already out there? And so you're going to have to look for more stories beyond. So you're going to have to go off-road and off-grid and look for all these stories. Mas maganda yung Kasi pag nakwento sa'yo, sometimes dadating na lang yan, uy, di ba ikaw yung gumawa niyan? Oh, alam mo ba sa ganun may ganito? Sabihin yan, talaga? Sige nga, puntahan ko yan. So pupuntahan ko. So normally I go there as someone just interested in a story. Uy, ganda pala rito, parang traveler. And then while you're there, okay pala dito. Ay, gumagawa pala kayo ng ganito rito. Ano yung difference dun sa kape nyo, sa kape nila? Ano yung difference sa paggawa nyo ng asin dito sa paggawa ng asin doon? So nakikipagkwentuhan ka. And then, in conversations like that, may lumalabas. And then sometimes, nagkukwento sila, hinahabol mo kunyari, salt making in Ilocos. Habang nagkukwento ganyan, may babanggit yan. Alam mo ba sa ganito, may ganyan.
So you'll check it out.
And then, And so sometimes you end up with another story because someone mentioned it. So you go check it out. And then, oh my God, okay to And then nanganganak. So eventually now you have like a backlog of places and things that you need to go and do an ocular on and to hear it firsthand from people who are there. And then when you hear it, and then wow, nafa-fascinate ka. Yun yung akin Pag na-fascinate ako, and I say, kung ako fascinated, I want to share that fascination with other people. Diba? Ba't ako lang? Gusto ko ikwento to Diba? Pagbalik mo ko na ng Pilipinas, ng Maynila. Uy, pumunta akong ganyan. Alam mo, may ganyan-ganyan dito. Talaga? Diba? Yung kinukwentuhan mo, they're also fascinated.
Yes.
So if they're fascinated, then you know that people are fascinated. You're all pretty much fascinated with the same things. Diba? And so you want to share that. Because people, a lot of the people, live vicariously through maybe what they just watch or read or a photo that's there. Diba? Some of us are not lucky enough, as lucky to be able to have the disposable income to just go there and go there. There are bills to pay. Nag-atrabaho ko, hindi ako makalib. Nag-aalaga ako nanay. Alaga ako ng kapatid. I can't. So, for people like that, of course they would want to go there also.
Yes.
Hindi So, the least I can do is, bigyan kitang storya. Bigyan kitang pakitaan ng litrato. At least, pwede kang manood ka ng ganun.
Well, Gab, I mean, you said you're 58, very young, but looking at the next generation, I know you also teach, no? Just maybe very quickly because we're running out of time. What advice? What's the best advice you can give aspiring filmmakers, documentarians?
Okay, and the technical aspects of taking a photo or shooting film, diba? Or shooting a documentary. Those are technical aspects. I think what you need to be able to grasp first and foremost, storya. What makes a story a story? What makes this compelling? Pag mahanap mo yan and then you start asking yourself, why am I so fascinated with this? Is there a challenge here? Is there a particular conflict? Or is it just a straightforward story? But does it have a heart? Ano yung kwento? Ano yung essence ng kwento? Once you find the heart of a story, then the technical aspects will come into play. How do I shoot this? Do I shoot it with a voiceover? Do I shoot it with a narrator? Do I shoot it with a first-person narration, kung sino yung subject ko? Or do I don't have any dialogue at all? It's just going to be purely cinematic and purely non-verbal at all.
Yes.
So there are many ways of approaching this. How do I tell it? Doon na yung execution. And then you can hone up on your filmmaking capabilities or when you take photos. Pero ano yung essence ng kinukuha mo? Story behind anything else. Story.
Ayun, you heard it from Sir Gabriel Malvar first. Story. Start with the story. And unfortunately, because I learned a lot, that's a wrap for today's episode of Spotlight. You're just gonna have to watch all his works to learn more about him, or we could have him back on the show. So a huge thank you to our guest Malvar for showing us how storytelling can preserve heritage, spark conversations, and just shine a light on unseen corners. Just what it really means to be a Filipino, no? So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. A Daily Tribune for more insightful conversations and empowering voices right here on Spotlight. Coming up at 3, just a few minutes from now, we'll have Usapang OFW with Chingby Fernandez, John Dodson, and Rafi Ayeng. Real talk on life abroad. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired. This has been Nicholas Price, and this has been Spotlight.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat mga katribo at sa mga taga-subaybay natin sa Daily Tribune. Nandito po ulit ang inyong lingkod. Ako po si Manong Joe Saldariaga para sagutin ang inyong mga katanungan. May tanong ang isang netizen sa atin, Manong Joe, sinasadya ba ng Meralco na pababain ang presyo ng kuryente tuwing tag-ulan at malamig ang panahon? Napakagandang tanong, pero ang sagot ko po dyan ay hindi po ito sinasadya ng Meralco. Ang paniwanag po dyan ay simple lang. Ang cooling appliances tulad ng aircon, electric fan at refrigerator ay madalas may pinakamalaking contribution sa monthly bill po natin sa bahay. Kapag tag-ulan, mas malamig ang panahon. Mas madali para sa mga cooling appliances na maabot at panatilihin ang sinet nating temperature dahil malamig na rin ang paligid. Nababawasan din ang oras ng paggamit natin, lalo ng aircon. Minsan, hindi na kailangan buksan ang aircon natin dahil electric fan lang, sapat na at komportable na tayo. Ang resulta, mas mababang konsumo ninyo sa kuryente sa inyong bahay, mas bababa ang inyong electricity bill. Ngayon, kapag mas mababa na nga ang konsumo, bumababa din ang overall demand sa power supply. At kapag mababa ang demand, may posibilidad na bumaba na rin ang generation charge, ang pinakamalaking bahagi sa bill ninyo na may malaking epekto sa buong presyo ng kuryente. Kaya kung mapapansin ninyo, sa mga buwang malamig at maulan, madalas bumababa ang inyong power bill. Hindi dahil sinasadya, kundi dahil sa natural na pagbaba ng inyong konsumo at gayon din ang demand. Patunay dito ang naging paggalaw ng presyo ng kuryente ngayong buwan. Ngayong Hunyo, sa ikalawang sunod na buwan ay bumaba ang rate ng Meralco, halos 11 centavos ang decrease sa presyo ng kuryente dahil sa tapyas ng generation charge. Sana ay naliwanagan ko po kayo sa aking explanation na ito kung bakit mas mababa ang inyong electricity bill tuwing tag-ulan o rainy season. Para sa iba pang mga katanungan, Ask Manong Joe uli. Hanggang sa muli mga katribo at sa mga taga-sunod natin sa Daily Tribune.